After a long, scorching weekend, we're back live with you, PHNX Cardinals. Bo Brack, I'm joined today by Howard Balzer, Johnny Venerable, and his entire family. They are on the road, squeezing out the rest of the break until, of course, training camp hits. Howard, less than a week from today, my man. This is the last week that we will not have actual Cardinals football to talk about. It's kind of exciting.
It really is. And like you said, next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, the team reports. Then they'll have the first practice on Thursday, and then we're into it. It's basically nonstop for all that time from then until the end of the season. Yeah, you got the bye week in there and all that, but still, it's here. It's here. And around the league, the Jets, of course, the subject of Hard Knocks, their entire team reports on Wednesday, 2 days from now, because of course they're in the Pro Football Hall of Fame game, which is only a couple weeks away, 2 weeks from Thursday, in fact. So they're the first. And some other teams have their rookies coming in early this week, but the Jets will be there with the whole team. So it's here, no doubt about it.
Right. I think I saw the Saints, their rookies report tomorrow. So you're already starting to see, along with Gangrene, some of those organizations already get started on the 2023 season. We're just getting started here today. Welcome, Chase. Thanks. Yeah, happy Monday to you. Looking forward to a great show as well. Gary Coker already firing it up. And look, this is just, we haven't even scratched the surface, but I guarantee it. Welcome to Tune's Corner. Clayton Tune is going to become a very popular name in the Cardinal circles. He's going to probably light it up on days of training camp, and then he's probably going to have, fifth round rookie days as well. He's going to have some preseason opportunities. I've maintained it, Howard. I think Clayton Tune, I think this organization wants to give him every opportunity to secure that second backup quarterback job while Kyler Murray's on the mend.
And that it might be a stretch to think he'll be the backup, but You're right. They're going to give him every opportunity in training camp to get a lot of reps. I'm sure we'll see him a lot in the 3 preseason games on his Jeff Driscoll, because this is a guy who can run a little bit. He's got some mobility. I mean, he might end up being the backup, but I think you're right about Tune. And just to go back just for a quick moment, when you mentioned the Saints rookies reporting tomorrow, that could be significant for the Cardinals, because there's 13 second-round draft picks still unsigned around the NFL, and one of them is a defensive end, Isaiah Foskey, who was picked right in front of Ojulari. So by the Saints having their rookies in a week before the Cardinals, let's all hope that maybe the Saints get Foskey signed, and so then that becomes probably the next guide, if you will, in terms of the deal that Ojulari will get. So it'll be interesting to watch that over the next week.
Yeah, and we're going to get into, the Madden ratings. We're going to get into the DeAndre Hopkins, why he truly ended up signing with the Tennessee Titans, who also haven't signed their second-round pick that belonged to the Arizona Cardinals at one point. They traded up for the 33rd overall pick. It became Will Levis. He remains unsigned. And why Kyler Murray, a lot of the execs and coaches and scouts still believe in Kyler. But, it's interesting. The BJ Ojulari has been an under-the-radar story. You've written about it, of course. Go PHNX.com. And with Foskey and Will Levis at the top of the round, it's all about slotting that guaranteed money, right? And it just trickles down to 41st overall, where the Cardinals selected BJ Ojulari. Am I right by saying that?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. And the interesting thing is, though, with Levis unsigned, and I'm trying to remember who's that the first pick of the second round.
Yeah, Joey Porter Jr.
Joey Porter Jr.
Yeah,
that becomes an issue too, to a degree, because I'm sure the agent's trying to say, hey, he's the 32nd player overall. That's usually a first round pick, but the slots aren't done that way. So it's almost impossible for the Steelers to, is it the Steelers who picked him?
Yeah.
I thought it was. I wanted to make sure. It's almost impossible for them to go over and above that because of the rookie pool. Then all these teams only have a certain amount of overall money that they can sign against, that they can sign guys against the cap. And so, but I'm sure Levis's agents, and being a quarterback, that complicates it a little bit, but they're waiting to see what happens with Porter. So there's no doubt that is how a lot of this slotting goes. And most of the second round picks, except for those first two, are all, from 40 to 52 in the second round. overall, and only 2 of those players from 40 to 52, and Ojulari's 41, only 2 of them have signed so far.
Yeah, you expect it to kind of change in the next week or so as execs and the agents really kind of get back to work as they prepare for the upcoming season?
Yeah, I would expect that to definitely happen. And that's why, especially with Foskey, I mean, he's 1 in front. So a lot of times these agents, they don't want to do a deal for Ojulari that's too different, and especially in terms of that guaranteed money and guaranteed salaries for those players. And so, yeah, I'm sure they're just waiting. They're just waiting to see what happens with Foskey. And like I said, the fact that they're coming in a little earlier, hopefully will break that log jam, and perhaps the Cardinals can get him in there by the start of camp. And you do have a couple days of leeway there, because you report on the 25th. There's not practice till the 27th, and then you're not in pads really for the first 4 or 5 days of camp before you can really put the pads fully on. So, but you still like to have him out there on the field, because he wasn't out there on the field at all during OTAs or minicamp.
Yeah, JG, Jonathan Gannon, told us as we were sitting in the Cardinals media room that, maintained that he was just working through an injury, right? A minor injury. And if you kind of follow the timeline of BJ Ojulari pre-draft, was a hamstring, right? And we saw him for a cup of coffee when he was out there for rookie mini camp, but we didn't see him beyond that. It doesn't seem like organization would do much to save face. It just seems like this is league wide. Yes. There wouldn't be any reason to hide behind anything over a contract dispute, correct?
No, exactly, and that's why this is different than certainly, as we've discussed, the Budda Baker situation. This one is different because it is league wide, and it's no different. I mean, as of July 1st, there's been 1 second-round pick signed since July 1st, and here we are at the 17th already. Yeah. And the number of unsigned guys as of July 1st in the second round was exactly the same number as last year. So this is nothing new, and this year the contracts are a little different in terms of having more guaranteed money in those base salaries. But even though they're different, though, that then plays into all these agents wanting to make sure that their deal doesn't look worse than someone, especially that might be picked after them.
Right. Yeah. And it's just the domino pieces that need to kind of fall before BJ Ojulari, who was selected 41st overall for the Arizona Cardinals, to put ink to paper on his deal. We're pretty confident it's going to happen sooner rather than later, as we are here, the calm before the storm, the 25th, both the Arizona Cardinals veterans and rookies reporting to minicamp out in Glendale at State Farm Stadium, and they'll take the field, as Howard mentioned, on the 27th. And then it's ready, set, go for this Arizona Cardinals organization. Its first training camp under Jonathan Gannon and his new coaching staff. As we sit here in the dog days, though, Howard, I'd love to have this conversation with you, because if I'm having it with Johnny, if I'm having it with producer Sean, I'm talking to somebody. We play Madden here in the office. I don't know really if you've spent any time playing Madden, but it was puzzling as we saw them start to reveal and unveil some of the ratings today. We start to see some wide receivers. We start to see some safeties. Budda Baker, the highest rated Cardinal to date so far, probably going to be the highest rated Arizona Cardinal. He comes in at 90. But what's your experience with Madden football? I mean, it's been around for a quarter of a century now. I mean, 25 iterations of the game. Have you played Madden football before?
Very rarely. There was a time when my grown sons played back in the day, and I would dabble a little with them. But for the most part, I just let them play and deal with it. I've never been that much of a video game guy, although I should date myself. I remember playing the first game, it really wasn't a video game, but it was Pong on this big old console. I used to play that. But on the
Atari, on the original Atari, if I'm right?
There we go. So I didn't do much, although I will say this, one of the companies I worked for, the Sports Exchange, for about, I'm going to say maybe around the 90s, maybe early 2000s, our company, for about 2 or 3 years, I believe it was, actually did the ratings for Madden. And that was interesting, and I contributed to that. And they have certain things that they want to have in the ratings, and they want certain offensive skill guys and speed guys to have high numbers, because they want it to be played that way. And so you do wonder, though, who puts all these together with some of the numbers you see from some of the players, as we'll certainly get into.
Yeah, let's take a look at these. As of right now, we don't have a full. They haven't unveiled every single Arizona Cardinals Madden rating, just mostly safeties and wide receivers. Budda Baker, the highest at 90, which a lot of Cardinals fans think is maybe too low. He's the 7th highest rated safety in the entire game. And then you drop about 6 points to Hollywood Brown. He's an 84 overall. Isaiah Simmons, this was surprising to me. He checks in at 81. So kind of was surprising was Rondale Moore at 80. And then you get to Jalen Thompson. This one I think is the most puzzling of being in the Cardinals at 79, especially because he's checking in under Isaiah Simmons. And if you're looking at them both as safeties, Jalen Thompson is a far more superior safety than Simmons at this point in his career. Zach Pascal, the wide receiver, at 74. Greg Dortch at 73. And then the rookie out of Stanford, 3rd-round pick, Michael Wilson, 69. Now, Howard, the Madden rating savant, what do you have to say about all this?
I'm with you 100% on Thompson. And I think one of the things probably why he's lower than Isaiah is because Isaiah probably has some pretty high numbers in terms of some of the athleticism categories. And we look at Jalen. It's not to say he's not a good athlete, but it's not like he just jumps off the board with a lot of things. But you would think with his ability, with his awareness, things like that, I don't think there's any doubt that he should be higher than a 79. The Budda one is puzzling, and maybe there's some ratings that weren't included in some of their initial, reveal. But there were 6 different categories that had ratings, and all of them were from 91 to 94.
Right.
So you look at that and you say, well, how the heck does he come in with a 90? Now, I do recall, and I don't know if they still have it, I do recall that there's an injury rating that is a part of it. And so perhaps he scored a little bit low there because he did have a couple of injuries last season, but he hasn't had many in his entire career. So that one, 90 is a pretty darn good rating to have.
Yeah, for sure.
No doubt about it. But when you see those other ones in those 6 crucial categories that are higher than 90, then you wonder how did it come in at that number?
Yeah, the math isn't mathing on this one as far as Budda Baker, no doubt about it, as far as what you get to an overall 90. But, I mean, the JT and then Simmons and Moore, like you talk about with injuries with Moore and Michael Wilson, their injury rating is similar, and it's 2 guys who can't stay on the field, and it doesn't seem to play the biggest role as far as what's going to take your overall rating down. And look, at the end of the day, I mean, you look at these Madden ratings, and I'd like to say that I don't give a crap about them, but I do get kind of I do get riled up looking at him just because I want it to make sense. And when you've got Jalen Thompson, a guy who ever since he was the supplemental draft pick of the Arizona Cardinals out of Washington State so many seasons ago, and all he's done is get better and better each and every year. And then to see Isaiah Simmons, who you still don't even know what his defined role is on this team, check in a couple points at him. Like, I just want it to make sense. And, it feels like a lot of these, it just doesn't make sense. Chase saying in the chat, Jalen got done and dirty for sure. I wonder what positions they have for Simmons playing. They actually have Simmons as a strong safety in Madden. So it's a little weird. It's going to be really fascinating to see as they do this the rest of the week. They're going to roll out, quarterbacks. They're going to roll out running backs. They're going to roll out linebackers. So we'll see like where, Zaven Collins and of course Kyler Murray, who's always a polarizing rating as far as Madden goes. But it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I think as far as, because these are not just numbers that are going to stick, this day and age where they can kind of update things and they'll start to update it as the season goes along. I got to imagine a Michael Wilson is somebody as the only place to go is up with his rating at 69.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I think, rookies, of course, are the toughest ones to rate because you can obviously look at certain things like athleticism and all that, but they haven't played in the NFL yet. So you don't know about, some of the other things that are important about being a successful player. And so, like you said, the only way to go is up. And, I think one of the things back to Isaiah for a moment, and especially that I think all of us are sitting there, as we've talked about, scratching our heads in terms of how he's going to be used. I don't see him as much a strong safety as he is more of a free. But when you look at, assuming Budda Baker is going to be here, then you've got him and Thompson as your two base safeties. And so where does Isaiah Simmons fit in that? So I'm not convinced. While I think he will get most of his snaps at safety, there's going to be a bunch of them that I think he's going to be up in front of the defensive backs, almost lined up, as a linebacker, depending on what the offense is doing on that particular play. So I think it does become a little difficult to rate him. I think a lot of it, like I said, is about his athleticism and his ability to make plays. But, so much is tough to really project now because you're just not sure how this new coaching staff with a new defense is going to utilize him.
Yeah, it's really tough to pinpoint. I mean, over the weekend, we saw that Isaiah Simmons embracing his role as a full-time defensive back. That's kind of the extent of what we know. He said that to us a couple months ago. He's going to be working out with the defensive backs going forward, and he goes to Ryan Clark's DB precision kind of retreat, and he's really kind of embracing that role. He played most of his snaps last year in the slot. Is he going to be kind of a glorified nickel or slot corner, or is he going to be kind of moving up in the box a little bit like Adrian Wilson did back in the day? It'd be interesting to really see how JG and Nick Rollis utilize the athleticism and versatility of Isaiah Simmons. That's definitely going to be something that we're going to be covering throughout training camp. But I got to tell you, before we move forward, about the true reason of why DeAndre Hopkins is going to be wearing a Tennessee Titans uniform. I want to tell you, the other day I came home after wrapping up a show, and I get home, my wife and my kid are there, and we didn't have any set up for dinner. And we had only two solutions. One was to go to the grocery store, get back out in the 110-degree heat, or we go to our friends over at a new sponsor of ours, Factor Meal Kits. And we put together one of the Factor Meal Kits, and it was unbelievable. It was my first Factor Meal Kit that we had made together. We took all the ingredients, built the meal up. It was fantastic. And when you're too busy with your plans, your work, everybody get back to school. We're going to be busy with training camp. You don't have a whole lot of time to figure out, meal prep and all that. Factor does all the hard work for you. It's fresh, never frozen meals that are ready in just 2 minutes. And all you have to do is heat them up. And then you get back poolside, turn it on the TV, watching, quarterback on Netflix, whatever you want to be doing with all your time. You don't have to spend any more time thinking about what you're going to eat for dinner. Go-to meals. You got smart meals around less than 550 calories per serving. Not going to bust your belt line there. They got vegan, veggie meals each week as well. To round out everything that you want. You can do add-ons. You can figure out breakfast items. Don't miss out on any of the Factor meals that they have going on right now. Go to factormeals.com/PHNX cards 50. You use that code, you'll get 50% off. That's PHNX cards 50. That's our specific promo code that's going to save you 50% off. That's PHNX cards 50 to get 50% off Factor meals at factormeals.com. Don't miss out on this. Speaking of ease and convenience, hitting up Circle K. Got a Circle K right at the corner of where I live in Phoenix. It's my go-to. You got to check out Circle K. Text PHNX to 31310 for buy one, get one free. Polar Pops. Don't miss out on this. Stock up at Circle K, America's thirst stop. It's with temperatures around 118, I think it was yesterday. You don't want to be parched. You got to make sure that you're hydrated. You got the Powerades, 4 for $5. You can enter to be one of 10 finalists for a 2023 Ford Big Bend Bronco SUV. It's unbelievable. Buy 2, get 1 free. Monster Energy drinks right now. And then you got the Beatbox Hard Tea. You buy 2, you get 1 free. So many deals you don't want to miss out on at Circle K. Make sure to text that PHNX code to 31310 to join their SMS subscriber club and get that buy one, get one free. 32-ounce Polar Pops. Head over to circlek.com/store-locator. That's circlek.com/store-locator to find Circle K's near you. Okay, so over the weekend, a little tasty treat after just a full offseason worth of speculation. Which uniform is DeAndre Hopkins going to be wearing? We get this nugget from Ian Rappaport, and this was multiple reports. There were a bunch of people all over the story, but DeAndre Hopkins, Howard, after him saying, the top 5 quarterbacks he would want to play with, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. The list goes on and on. I don't think anybody had Ryan Tannehill or Malik Willis or Will Levis on that bingo card, but the Titans are giving DeAndre Hopkins a 2-year, $26 million deal worth up to $32 million in incentives. And I think Rap Sheet even tweeted out, what it would take to get to tap into those incentives, but he gets a $12 million base in year 1 with a chance to get up to $15 million. Biggest takeaway after seeing DeAndre Hopkins, the latest former wide receiver 1 to land in Nashville.
Yeah, the Tannehill aspect of it is somewhat surprising, especially when you consider that what Hopkins said himself and some of the public things, during this, long offseason, where he talked about, the type of quarterback that he wants to be with and all these things. And I don't think you would put Ryan Tannehill on that list. And so this does seem to be a decision that DeAndre made, based on the best contract that he could get. The other thing that jumps out at me, Bo, is this. I find it very interesting that one of the specifics of the contract, as you said, Ian Rappaport spelled out all the incentives of what he has to get to reach $3 million in incentives each year of the contract. Those numbers came out before we know the signing bonus, before we know the total guarantee in the deal, and how is the second year of this contract structured in terms of that? Is there any guarantees in the second year? I mean, he mentioned that he's getting a base of $12 million. I wonder if that's absolutely accurate, because base normally means salary. So that would leave $14 million remaining. And what's that made up? Is there a signing bonus in there? Does his base salary go down next year? Or is that $12 million for this year? Is that really a combination of salary and signing bonus? And so those are the things we don't know yet. We'll know within a few days, but we don't know it yet. And so I think that's pretty interesting. And then even when you look at those incentives, I did a little chart of what all DeAndre's stats in those 3 categories, receptions, yards, and touchdowns for the 10 seasons he's played in the NFL. He maxed out with the $3 million incentives 3 times, with the last one being 5 years ago in 2018. He reached $2.5 million twice, $1.5 million once, $2 million once, and then in 2021 here with the Cardinals, $750,000. Yeah, that was the only one that he reached, and that was with his 8 touchdowns. And then last year, nothing. And so you really wonder how he's going to be able to reach some of those incentives with Ryan Tannehill. Doesn't mean he won't. I mean, the guy's still a very good player, no doubt about it. But we also know that, I looked at A.J. Brown when he was with the Titans. If you use the same numbers that were in Hopkins incentives, in 2021, A.J. Brown would have made $750,000. Now, the year before was better. He would have made $2.25 million. That was a big year for him. So, but you still do wonder how this is going to play out with DeAndre reaching those incentives. He's certainly going to have to play most of the games for him to reach them. Right. That's the big question, whether he will, because that hasn't happened for the last 2 seasons.
I feel like this contract is built, a lot like just the Tennessee Titans' entire roster. I mean, the margin for error is very slim, if not, non-existent, as far as for him to cash in on all those incentives, for him to maximize himself, for the Titans to maximize themselves as a football team. Everything has to go 100% correct. As far as, Ryan Tannehill and his availability, because otherwise you're relying on Malik Willis and you're relying on Will Levis, whatever decision they go as far as the backup quarterback. And it's not great. It's a steep fall off. And that's saying a lot considering we're talking about Ryan Tannehill. And then you got Derrick Henry. I mean, beyond Derrick Henry, what's the running back situation look like? So, they're betting on that trio to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And, it's a run heavy offense. I mean, it's no joke. I mean, I remember in in the COVID season. It was Mike Vrabel wearing a mask onto the team plane that just says, give the ball to Derrick Henry. Like, that's their philosophy, and it should continue to be. It turns out to be successful, but and it sets up the play action, which makes Ryan Tannehill a lot better quarterback. And I think it sets up quality looks for DeAndre Hopkins. But, in order to get to these incentives, it doesn't seem that like it bodes well for a guy like D-Hop. But, I think the message for as far as DeAndre Hopkins, especially after an offseason's worth of speculation, it's clear after he signed with the Tennessee Titans. It wasn't about winning. And it wasn't about maybe continuing to add to that legacy and strengthening his stats potentially for the Pro Football Hall of Fame that we'll talk about here later on the show. It was all about the almighty dollar. It was all about maximizing his earning potential potentially one more time at the NFL level, and then maybe he'll go ring chase after this is all said and done. Like you said, we don't know what the guarantees are in year two. It could be just kind of a 1 year, 2 year deal, and he could be back out there in the offseason looking for work next year. But, it came down to the money. And I don't think the Arizona Cardinals were ever there was never a conversation. I think they were realistic about this, that DeAndre Hopkins, he would have had to take a significant pay cut in order to make it work for the Arizona Cardinals. He would have to absorb basically all his guaranteed money. He would have to pretty much put it all in 2023, because at the end of the day, I think it came down to, Howard, the Arizona Cardinals didn't want DeAndre Hopkins' bulky contract on the books beyond 2023. That was the ultimate goal for them this offseason.
No question. No question about it. And when you also look at it from this framework, let's remember his contract for this year with the Cardinals called for just under $19.5 million. So if he's truly only receiving $12 million this year, well, that's a pretty big pay cut right there. And so granted, you look at the Titans, and certainly, even though they had a lot of issues last year, they were the first place team in that division until they started getting some injuries down the stretch that almost rivaled the Cardinals in terms of their offensive line and Tannehill and some other players. And I think they ended up losing 7 games in a row, something like that, to end the regular season. So certainly they still have, probably a better overall roster, some consistency in their coaching staff, and a lot of those things. But
sure,
that becomes a question too. The two teams that he visited, one coached obviously by Bill Belichick, the other coached by Mike Vrabel, who was a Belichick disciple and played for Belichick. And so you wonder, and there's been a lot said that, well, maybe the Patriots didn't want a guy who kind of doesn't like to practice and doesn't practice much. But something tells me that Mike Vrabel doesn't like those guys either. So this is a very interesting mix, a very interesting relationship. And so it's going to be very intriguing to see the way it plays out. And of course, now here it is, the date that we're at, July 17th, and he hasn't had one day with the team. He hasn't worked with the quarterback, doesn't know the offense, has all those things that have to happen. And then if Ryan Tannehill gets hurt, he missed 5 games last season. So if something happens with him, then you're going with a lot of inexperience at that quarterback position, obviously.
Yeah, it's pretty clear, cut and dry. I'd be curious to see if maybe some of the insiders, if there was any other traction from any of the teams. It just doesn't seem like, felt like the Bills, the Chiefs, they were all willing to take him. They would probably open up their arms wide open if he was willing to take somewhere close to the vet minimum, but that's not, the numbers that we're looking at, even if it doesn't include those incentives, a 2-year, $26 million deal, and looking at what the base money would be, it doesn't come close to what, a vet minimum would get. It's significantly more. And look, good for DeAndre Hopkins if that's what he wanted to do, but don't try to don't tell me you want to go contend for Lombardi and then go sign with the Titans, whose quarterback position's in flux, their roster's turning over, and it's riding this fine line, and maybe not even fine, just this line of competing and rebuilding. New general manager, they've had some changes, especially on the offensive play calling side of the ball. It just seems like an organization in flux, and not one that, if you're a player really trying to continue your legacy that's rich like DeAndre Hopkins, that it wouldn't be the ideal landing spot. I can't see somebody kind of spit shine that up enough for me to get me to believe that. I just can't. So But look, he's a 93 on. We talk about Madden ratings. He's a 93. He would have been probably the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, it's because he's probably got like a 98 or 99 catch rating. His route running is still pretty precise. So Madden doesn't take in consideration that he's missed half the games, one for PED suspension, the other for injuries, and some of the other, red flags that organizations viewed with DeAndre Hopkins when his trade market plummeted to where the Arizona Cardinals ended up releasing him on a Friday before, what was it? Was it Memorial Day weekend, or was it?
Yeah,
it was right before.
Yeah, it was Friday when the Cardinals announced it before Memorial Day weekend, and then it didn't become official until his contract was terminated on the Tuesday, the day after Memorial Day, on May 30th. So yeah, and so look how long it took him to get signed. I think one other significant thing, Bo, with this contract is how the first level of incentives is 65 receptions, 750 yards, and 4 touchdowns. What's significant about that is every one of those numbers is more than what he had last year. And of course, he missed a lot of games, but he was 64 for 717 with 3 touchdowns. And why that is significant is because of the way incentives work against the salary cap. And there's 2 levels of incentives. One is called likely to be earned. And if they're considered likely to be earned, they count against the cap this year. If it's unlikely to be earned, and what decides that, it's all based on last year's number. So all of these incentives are unlikely to be earned. And so none of them count against the cap this year. Now, if he reaches any of them, that will go against the cap next year. But the point I'm getting at, too, is that teams like Buffalo and Kansas City, which you would think would have been great spots for him, especially in terms of wanting to win and the quarterbacks that are there, they didn't have a lot of cap space. But they could have been trying to structure a contract that had, less money in this year, a signing bonus, and who knows, the Tennessee contract might have voidable years also, which allows you to, prorate the signing bonus over additional years that aren't really part of the contract. But they could have offered Hopkins even more incentives, even higher incentives to get him there. And then if he reaches them, it's great for them and good for him, obviously. But none of it would go against that team's cap until next year. So I don't know if those teams talked about it. You have to believe they must have been thinking of a way to structure, because it was always said that they were in the conversation for a lot of the time. But it seems like that Hopkins, very well might not have wanted that. And he wanted to make as much money, to get as much money this year, at least as close as possible to what he was supposed to make if he had been on the Cardinals.
I mean, every NFL player has a competitive streak, right? But then there's that battle, I would think. And I think J.J. Watt outlined it pretty well in the final, couple episodes of Hard Knocks, where he talks about the small shelf life of these careers. And, it comes into, you've got this small window where you can maximize, obviously, your peak playing years, your peak earning potential, and then your opportunities to win. And it's really, when you have the chances at all 3 of them, it's rare. And in DeAndre Hopkins' case, especially with some of the red flags surrounding him, I think he had to figure out, going into his age 31 season, where he, at this point in this offseason, his career, what he wanted to maximize. And it was his earning potential. And then I think maybe he views, okay, once the guaranteed dollars kind of dwindle and go away, he'll go sign and become, a complimentary wide receiver on a really well-built roster, and then go ring chase maybe in a season or 2. But right now, this is maybe his last chance to earn a 2-year, $26 million, potentially $32 million contract in his career at this stage. So it's a really fascinating story, just because of what we thought going into this offseason, and then what reality was as far as how the league views a wide receiver like DeAndre Hopkins. And also the fact that you when he's out there and he's between the lines, he's still a very impactful wide receiver. He really is. He changed what he brought to the table when he returned from his 6-game suspension, and they're playing Thursday Night Football against the Saints. And, we talked to Kyler. We talked at the time Cliff Kingsbury, who's the play caller, what he does and what he forces the defense to show you and set up. It's pretty unbelievable that no team's like, oh, we don't want to trade even like a late round draft pick for that. And there was no market for him. There is a market for Shady Rays, obviously premium polarized sunglasses for a great price. And you need to take advantage of the best deal of the season. Using the code PHNX, you can get 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses. Just go to shadyrays.com. It's an independent sunglasses company. They have actually got a brick and mortar store here in the Valley of the Sun. Their new location up there in Kierland Commons in North Scottsdale. Check it out. It's unbelievable. You can try on all the glasses that they have for sale right there at Kierland Commons, and go online and buy the Shady Rays of your choice for a pretty decent price, right? 50% off 2 or more pairs. 250,000 people are giving them 5 stars or more. They've rated them 5 stars or more. Don't miss out. Don't leave your eyes unprotected and not looking cool any longer. Go to shadyrays.com. Use that promo code PHNX. Also, let's build the stack. Let's build a stack right now on BetMGM right now as we gear up for the NFL season. Of course, we're going to be out at the BetMGM Sportsbook every game day. It's right there on the Great Lawn at State Farm Stadium. But sign up right now. Join us at BetMGM. Get the bonus bets right now. Sign up with the code PHNX. And it's been going on. BetMGM players will receive a bonus bet upon login in the BetMGM Sportsbook every Friday. It continues. Actually, you've got the bonus bets going on. Also, you've got a lot of other great opportunities on BetMGM that you don't want to miss out on. But the key thing is for you to utilize that code PHNX when you sign up. There's different offers depending on where you live, but it's for our Arizona audience. And you got to check out the show notes, of course, for the full details. But our guy, Shane Diefenbach, is going to tell you all about it in our disclaimer.
Disclaimer, 21 plus to wager. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in Washington, D.C., Mississippi, Nevada, New York, and Ontario. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369, New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, Arizona. 1-800-522-4700, Kansas, Nevada. 1-800-327-5050, Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF, Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help, Michigan.
Yeah, take advantage, of course, their BetMGM swing for the fences as well. It's easy. You just download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS, Android, and basically just depending on the area of the strike zone you pick in this contest, you get a single, double, triple, or home run pop out and receive a prize associated with that type of hit. You play it once a day. And prizing must be used on MLB and expires in 24 hours. But it's a fun little game to play on the BetMGM Sportsbook. Make sure you're signing up with that code PHNX. All right, so what the greatest running back in Arizona Cardinals franchise history, Howard, is finally going to get maybe his flowers by the end of the month. So you're going to be headed out there. Of course, the Pro Football Hall of Fame is going to enshrine a new class. But with that, we find out whether or not Ottis Anderson is going to make it to the next step. Because as of right now, Ottis Anderson is a semifinalist, a senior semifinalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
And that is for the class of 2024.
Yeah.
So here we are a couple of weeks away from this year's class being enshrined for 2023, but it's already beginning for planning for next year's class. And so, and I'm humbled. Obviously, I'm humbled to be on the overall selection committee, and I'm also part of the seniors committee. I guess for good reason, right? But so we voted on. We had a list, Bo, of 199 nominees that we had to pare down to. We each voted. There's only 12 of us on that committee. We voted for 25, and I will say that a lot of those on the 199. I don't even know why they were on there. It was just kind of a lot of weird stuff. But bottom line is we voted for 25, and because of ties, there are 31 semifinalists. And the one thing we don't know is how many votes all these guys got. And so there was a tie at least at 25, to go to 31. Well, it might have been the same. It might have been a first tie at 23 or 22. Mm-hmm. Who knows? And who knows if they only got 1 or 2 votes? But we don't know that. We just know they're all semifinalists and all, eligible. There's 9 guys on that list that were in the final 12 last year and did not advance to the final 3, of which there'll be this year of Joe Klecko, Ken Riley, and Chuck Howley. So I don't have a lot of confidence that Ottis is going to move on. I was glad to see him on that list. I thought he should have been on it before. I thought he at least should have been a semifinalist or a finalist at some point during his modern day eligibility. Because here's a guy, Bo, I don't know if people realize this. When he retired, he was 7th all-time in rushing touchdowns and 8th all-time in yards. And yet it was as if people just forgot about him. And I don't get it. He had, the years with the Cardinals. Then he moved on to the Giants. He was a Super Bowl MVP. And, people watching and see that photo there. I'll never forget, Bo. I was in St. Louis at the time, and I didn't know that much about him. He played at University of Miami. They weren't that good of a team. They weren't on TV much. And, of course, we're going back to the late 70s.
Right.
And I remember seeing him the first day. I don't remember if it was mini camp or training camp. And I just looked at this physical specimen and said, oh, my goodness. You can just look at him and say, this guy should be a player. And he just made his mark immediately. He set a rookie record for rushing yards. And I'll never forget his first play. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think it might not have been his first play, but it was early in a game against Dallas that the Cardinals were playing at home. And a little hole opened up to the left, and he got through it so fast and went something like 76 yards for a touchdown. It was unbelievable. And Busch Stadium at the time only seated 51,000 for football.
Yeah.
If it had a roof, it would have blown off. That's how loud it was. It was just amazing. And the guy had a great career. And maybe not in the the Emmitt Smiths and the Walter Paytons, but I think he's at least deserving to be discussed. And it'll be interesting to see if he moves on. And we'll know that. We won't know it by we will know by Hall of Fame weekend if he made it to the 12, because we all vote this week, and then the final 12 will be announced on July 27th. So we'll know if he made it to the 12. I'm hopeful. I'm not optimistic because, you look at, there's so many unbelievable players on this list that all were overlooked. There's a lot of guys on these lists that were never discussed when they in their modern day eligibility. It's something like 18 guys were never finalists when they were in their modern day, and Ottis is one of them.
It raises awareness to Cardinals fans. Obviously, it's tough because he played just for the St. Louis Cardinals and then the Giants beyond that. But we had the graphic up there, even with guys David Johnson, who played a lot of big snaps for this organization and played at a high level for a short amount of time. Ottis Anderson is the franchise rank top rushing attempts, rushing yards. Why couldn't we get this guy 1 extra yard in a Cardinals uniform to get it to 8,000? The OCD in me is going crazy with 7,999 yards, 46 rushing touchdowns, and he averaged over 80 yards per game. You talk about that rookie season. He averaged over 100 yards rushing per game in a Cardinals uniform in his 1979 rookie season. Pretty unbelievable. And when you think about, the greatest running backs in Cardinals history, this is the guy. So be exciting. It's just good that he's made it this far, and fans who probably didn't know about Ottis Anderson otherwise now know, okay, here's the guy that's the top, all the major leading rushing statistics in franchise history. I can't imagine, a guy let's keep in perspective, James Conner's been in this organization for 2 seasons. He's got 26 touchdowns. He's still 20 away from Ottis Anderson, who had 46. Guys have had good seasons, 1 to 2, maybe 3 max as a Cardinals running back. Nobody's strung together as Ottis did 8 seasons, with the Cardinals organization, and can pretty well consistently played at a high level. So it is pretty astounding as well that he's not really gotten that much respect, even in his original, opportunity to make it to Canton. And it sounds like to you, you're not too optimistic that it's going to happen, but we're still having this conversation. The other guy we have a conversation about before we get out of here, I noticed is Jeremy Fowler in the those pundits and analysts, experts over at ESPN continue their series where they tap into execs, coaches, scouts, players around the league, and they survey them, and they get top 10 players at each position. Now, the Arizona Cardinals have been pretty much snubbed and left out on most of the top 10 lists, from, offensive tackles to guards to running backs to, cornerbacks and tight ends. But Budda Baker was fourth on the safeties list. And then I see on quarterbacks today, I'm not expecting to see Kyler Murray's name on this list. One, because, he's kind of a polarizing figure. Two, obviously he's coming off the ACL and the meniscus injury and the surgery, right? But I see that, he received votes as a top 10 quarterback. And I think that's important for Cardinals fans to realize, that he's recognized around the league still as a legitimate talent at the quarterback position.
No question about it. He does have the respect of a lot of people in the NFL. And obviously there's a lot of question marks with him right now because of all the reasons that we all know and that you just mentioned. But inability, I think what everyone is certainly wondering is, what will he be like when he does come back and is healthy? Will he be the same? Will he be the same guy, especially in terms of running the football, or will there be some caution, especially in the beginning? And so that's why it's just really hard to get a handle on what it's going to be like for him this year. And then the other thing is, whenever it is he gets on the field, is he going to be able to stay healthy? Mm-hmm. And that to me, Bo, I've said this many times, is one of the big questions about him, is that, yes, this is the most serious injury he's had, but a couple of the other seasons were also affected by injuries, whether it was the shoulder in 2020, the next year in 2021 with the hamstring, and then the high ankle sprain. And so, can he stay healthy? I think that remains the biggest question about him, because you just can't keep having injuries that, even if you don't miss games, that they're affecting the way you play on the field. And so that to me is the thing he has to prove the most, is being able to stay on the field, because I think the ability, we know the ability is there to do so many things on the field as a quarterback.
Yeah, it is really important, especially with the last two seasons. I mean, coming off his first serious injury that's impacted his career this past December, and then had surgery in January. You did have the nagging injuries. You had the hamstring, you had the ankle. And I mean, you saw those injuries happen, the slide as far as the ankle in the Packers game, and then how long that kept him out. It kept him out, I think, 3 weeks at the time. And then he had the hamstring last year, where he injured it against the Vikings and then re-aggravated against the Seahawks, and then, missed some time. It's going to be important, hopefully, with Drew Petzing's offense and maybe bulking up on the offensive line is going to keep him out of harm's way. But you think about those injuries, and it wasn't really because, somebody missed their assignment blocking and he was just, feasted on. He's never really truly been squared up. You just hope that these tiny nagging injuries don't consistently pop up each and every season. And I think that's an important part of this. Like when the Arizona Cardinals put Kyler Murray back on the playing field, you'd hope that he can stay out there for, the remainder of the time, right? If he's put out there, week 5, that he makes it all the way through week 18 and plays, all of those games, and shows this organization that, sure, he had a couple injuries the previous 2 seasons, but going forward, he's going to be a guy that, with the rehab he did and in the shape he's in, that's going to put him in a position to be successful. And I don't remember Jacoby Brissett dealing with injuries and taking shots, from an offense that Drew Petzing comes over from Cleveland. So hopefully more of an emphasis on the running game, a bulked up offensive line puts Kyler Murray in a position to be more successful and stay on the playing field. One thing that makes us more successful is our partnership with Four Peaks. It's our beer partner. We love Four Peaks. It's a magical place to go check out any game, and also, of course, check out all the beer that they brew on location. Of course, Kilt Lifters, the flagship. They've got the number one WOW wheat, the number one wheat beer in the state of Arizona. All the IPAs you can dream about. It's right there at Four Peaks. Check them out on social media as well, at Four Peaks Brew and at Four Peaks Pub, for the latest on Arizona's premier craft brewery. If you're going over to Four Peaks, you're going to indulge in the beer, you got to be 21 years or older, and we ask that you do it responsibly. Also, if you're in Tempe, another place to check out. Our friends over at Illegal Pete's. Illegal Pete's, especially on Mondays, is the spot to be. They've got Margarita Mondays. Can't go wrong with that. And then on Tuesdays, they've got Taco Tuesdays. Illegal Pete's, of course, is the strongest margarita in Arizona. Irresistible drinks, mouth-watering food with all your little heart that'll fill your heart's desires. Full menu, bowls, tacos, salads, burritos, and nachos, and that piping hot queso. Go to Legal Pete's, your go-to spot this summer. Kick back, enjoy that ice-cold margarita, cool off the bucket with high noons. They've got the 5 high noons for $22, and follow them on Instagram at Illegal Pete's, and make sure this summer continues to be one for the books at Illegal Pete's. Wrapping up a big edition here of PHNX Cardinals with Howard Balzer. Howard, what do we got in the works? What are we going to see soon up at gophnx.com?
I'm going to do some things. I know I did something last week on Kyler Murray and, a preview, so to speak, of what was going to be in flight plan. And I'm going to follow that up with some other takeaways from that and those things. And then we're getting ready to, kind of preview camp and preview the season. And at some point in the next week or so, I'll have, a story on, we were talking about Ottis Anderson, a story on Don Coryell.
Yeah.
50 years ago, was hired by Bill Bidwell, the owner of the Cardinals, and it was kind of an out-of-the-box hire, and hired 50 years ago, and here he is finally now getting his due after what he did as a head coach with the Cardinals and the San Diego Chargers. So I'll have a deep dive into that, and just the fact, I've maintained, Bo, that if Bill Bidwell hadn't hired Don Coryell back then, he had been at San Diego State, I believe it was 19 years at the time. If he hadn't hired him, who knows if he ever gets a job in the NFL. And if he doesn't get a job in the NFL, obviously he's not going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So it was, pretty good hire, obviously. Unfortunately, like many, it didn't work out in the long run after they had 3 great seasons. But still, what he accomplished as a head coach is unique. And we still see the offense that he put in St. Louis and in San Diego. We still see that in the NFL today. It stood the test of time.
Yeah, you got to look for those articles coming up. GoPHNX.com. As Howard said, he's got the one from last week, kind of the Kyler Murray flight plan article. You got to check that out for yourself as well and become a diehard. Of course, get yourself in the mix. Get some of the perks that all our diehards get. With it's exclusive access to the member Discord, and you get the full access to the website. You get some free swag like this PHNX shirt. We got hats, everything at the PHNX locker. You can get yearly perks from becoming a diehard at gophnx.com. Howard, always a pleasure to keep up with you, catch up with you, hear what your thoughts are on the upcoming Arizona Cardinals season. You and I are both going to be out there every day at training camp. Cannot wait for that. It's coming too soon and can't get here soon enough. Can't wait for it. Next week, we will be out there in Glendale. Thanks for joining us today.
Always good to